you've accomplished a lot in life, and now later in life, you are an expert motivational speaker. You're a motivator. You have a great story. I'm a firm believer, and it's okay to disagree. I'm a firm believer that you can't teach motivation, meaning it has to be a primal instinct, right? And in other words, it has to be either a fight or flight syndrome. Now, you can get motivation, but again, there has to be some sort of event that pushes you to want to do it at the end. I mean, you can learn motivation, you can hear other people's stories, but do you agree with me that you really can't teach motivation? I think that you have to either have it or you don't. And if you don't, you got to find something deep down inside that will cause you to get off your ass and execute and do what you got to do.
I think the term teach motivation is interesting because
there are just too many commercial loan brokers that don't have a damn clue of what they're doing. All we're trying to do here is better the industry for everybody. At the end of the day, you can make great money in this industry, but in the end, it's all about helping people. You know, people always say, Chris, how can I be a successful broker? It's 2 words, hard work and dedication. If you don't like talking to people, you probably shouldn't be in this business.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to Entrepreneurs in Finance, where we explore the daily lives of entrepreneurs, finance professionals, and now very famous, innovative sports figures. And I am so proud to introduce this gentleman. It'll be the first of its kind on this show. Give a warm welcome to Mr. Joe Theismann. Hey, Joe.
Chris, thank you so much. And please stop applauding. Everybody is stop right now. It's okay. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Sit back down. I don't need the standing ovation, but thank you. No, I appreciate it. It's great being with you. This is exciting for me as well because most of the time we wind up doing things regarding just the world of sports.
Mm-hmm.
But to have an opportunity to talk about entrepreneurship, to be able to look at life from a different perspective, not just as a professional athlete, but as an investor, as somebody in finance and all the elements of life that we deal with. But I really appreciate the chance to be with you.
And I appreciate you donating your time here to be with us. And I think for this type of interview, there's no other person I could think about I would rather have than you, because I'm not going to focus more on your sports career. I'm going to ask you questions that tie that into business, because I think you've done a shit ton of interviews on your career in the NFL, and it's certainly an impressive career. But what I find really fascinating about yourself is, not only just your NFL career, but how you transitioned after and what you're doing now. And you're an entrepreneur yourself, and you're a motivational speaker, and you're very dynamic. And what you did after your career is what I'm more interested in. So this should be a great conversation. So Joe, you had a very interesting career path. You went to Notre Dame, correct?
Yep.
And you achieved probably, I would think, one of your first goals in life, which was to make it into the NFL. I mean, was that a major goal for your career?
Well, what's even a little bit more interesting than that, Chris, go back is my life has been sort of one constant reevaluation, starting with my decision to go to the University of Notre Dame. I actually signed at North Carolina State University.
Really? Okay.
My head football coach at South River High School in New Jersey, where I grew up, was the backup quarterback to Roman Gabriel at North Carolina State University. Of course, Roman, for those young people out there, you'd have to Google it.
Right.
But Roman was a quarterback for the Rams and played in the National Football League, and just a terrific quarterback. And Ron Wojcicki was my coach, and he backed him up. And I thought, hey, that's a great place to go to college. I visited 5 schools. I had a whole lot of offers, but I really just cut it down to 5. Mm-hmm. North Carolina State, North Carolina, Wake Forest, Penn State, and Notre Dame were the 5 schools I visited. I never really got out to Notre Dame because I said, I'm going to go to North Carolina State. And then as time went on, Notre Dame came to me and said, we really would love to have you make a trip out to Notre Dame, out to South Bend. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, fine. I flew out to South Bend. Rocky Bleier, great Pittsburgh Steeler and Vietnam vet, was my chaperone. And so I spent a couple days out on the campus. We played basketball. That's the way they evaluated us back in the late 60s, is they wanted to see what kind of athletes you were.
Outside of your sport.
They wanted to see what you were as an athlete, because what they did with with so many. There were 13 freshman quarterbacks when I went to the university
Wow.
in 1967, and they made other people other things: defensive backs, running backs, tight ends, linebackers. But I was too skinny. I was 152 pounds. Not much they could do with me.
Right.
And so anyway, that was one sort of a reevaluation. Wound up going to Notre Dame, and then I got drafted by the Miami Dolphins in 1971.
Which, by the way, is my team. I just told you that just now. So
nice,
but
I'm not going to apologize for the Super Bowl. If you're looking for one, you're not going to get one.
I know.
But it's so I wind up going to Canada, signing with the Toronto Argonauts, which I loved. I love being in Canada. I love the city of Toronto. I love the people of Toronto. It was great. I mean, you learn to live in another country, albeit it's similar, but there's always those little nuances that make it so different.
European influence.
It is a little bit, and then remember that was the early 70s. I mean, that's Flower Child, and the Vietnam War was just really winding down. So you had a lot of social unrest in the country at that particular time as well. And so I wound up going to Toronto, and I committed to Miami. I sat on a TV show down in Miami, and I said, "Come hell or high water, I'll be a Miami Dolphin." And wouldn't you know it,
Did you get courted by Don Shula at all?
I got reamed by Don Shula.
Did you? Okay.
I got taken apart by Don Shula. Here's the story. So I go down to Miami to negotiate my contract. Now, I thought I was smart enough. Okay, I'm a Notre Dame guy. I'm smart enough to be able to negotiate my own contract. How hard could it possibly be?
Right.
Well, Joe Robbie owned the team at that time, and his general manager was having heart procedure. So I negotiated my contract with the owner.
Wow.
So we sat down in his office, and he said, "What do you want?" And I said, "You'll love these numbers." I said, "I want $35,000, $45,000, and $55,000, and I want a $35,000 signing bonus." He says, "You got it." I went, "Well, I read books on negotiation. It doesn't work this way. Okay, we have to have a little banner back and forth, all that stuff." No, he gave it to me. And then I wanted the bonus broken down into 3 separate payments over 3 years because of tax purposes. And so it was 12, 12, and 11. Well, when they sent me the contract, they said if I didn't show up for any of those last 2 years, and remember, the Vietnam War was going on at that time, or winding down, but I didn't know whether I'd be called to active duty. And I said, no, that bonus is unrelated to anything. That's just mine when I signed the contract. Well, we went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Finally, they relented and said, "Okay, fine." In the meantime, I'd already flown to Toronto, met with John Bassett Sr., who owned the team, who also happened to own radio, media, and newspaper outlets.
Right.
They gave me an ultimatum. The contract was 50, 50, 50, 50. 50,000 bonus, 50 for each year, U.S. So I signed the contract. I said, "Please do me a favor. Let me call Coach Shula and tell him what I've done." I fly back, because I hadn't signed a contract in Miami. I just sort of publicly committed to it.
Sure.
So I fly back. I fly back to South Bend, and I get a phone call at 6 a.m. in the morning. It's Era Parseghian, my coach. Era was my consultant, whom I never consulted. It's like having a financial advisor and never listening to him. So that's what it was. Yeah. So I get on the phone with Era, and he says, "What have you done?" So I signed with the Argonauts. He said, "I know. I just got off the phone with Shula, and he's on a plane up here right now." Don flew up to South Bend and tore me a new one. Oh my God! You had a moral commitment to the Dolphins, and you said this and you did this. And I said, "Well, you had a moral commitment not to screw with my contract," and I learned a great lesson. Number one, Coach Shula really carries a grudge for a long time. Okay.
Well, he's Italian.
I learned that.
Italians do.
I'm telling you, man. It went on for years.
Right.
And sort of to tie a little bow around that story is who did we wind up beating in Super Bowl 17? The Miami Dolphins and Don Shula. So
wow, was that a little bit of a kind of a?
Not for me.
I told you, no, it wasn't.
No,
you didn't hold on. No,
not for me at all.
Okay.
I mean, that was I missed some of the greatest Dolphin teams that existed. 71, 72,
perfect
73.
team. Yeah, the perfect team.
The perfect team. And really, and not to toot my own horn, but if I had stayed in Miami, I would have been the quarterback of that 72 team. Instead, Don went to Baltimore and got Earl Morrall to replace me. And Earl Morrall actually started 9 games, I believe, during the 1972 season that the Miami Dolphins were undefeated.
Right.
And Bob Greasy played the latter part of that season. So really, when you think about it, the Miami Dolphins have me to thank for the fact that Earl Morrall wound up being the quarterback.
That's a great way to look
I know.
at it.
It
Yeah.
sort of circumvents things a little bit. But
Yeah.
when you really think about it, if I had been there, maybe it wouldn't have been the same. But now that Earl was there, and they wanted to win the championship.
Yeah.
But it was, I love living in Toronto. I love the experience of playing a different kind of a game. I
Sure.
mean, we have Canadian football down here in the United States. And
Right.
some great players have come out of it. Doug Flutie, Warren Moon, Hall of Famers.
Mm-hmm.
Marv Levy, Hall of
Mhm.
Fame. Bud Grant, Hall of Fame. I mean, you've seen people start their careers in the Canadian Football League. And it was a fun experience. It was great living in another country
Right.
and going through that experience. And
Yeah.
I just, so I've sort of, I guess you could say it's been, my career's really started in a reevaluated way. I made a decision and I learned a great lesson. This is for people listening to the show from a financial standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
As much as you think you know about finance, trust the professionals.
Mm.
Trust the
Right.
people that do it for a living, because anytime your emotions get involved, you're probably not going to make the best decision for you.
Sure.
And for me, I tried to do my contract myself.
Yeah.
Chris, I didn't think it was that difficult.
Right.
Now come full circle. My last contract with the Washington football team, at that time they were the Redskins.
Mhm.
I did negotiate that with Mr. Cook by myself, simply because he was going to give me what he wanted to give me, and it wasn't a case of negotiation.
Right. You knew that ahead of time.
I knew
though.
going in. I mean,
You knew that ahead of time.
why
Yeah.
give somebody 10% of my money when it's not going to do anything? You're not going to get me
Sure.
any more.
Yeah.
So why?
It's called pre-intelligence. I mean, if you have intelligence going in that you know what the outcome's going to be, why
Why fight
outsource
it?
that?
Yeah, why fight it?
Right.
Why give somebody else the opportunity
And-
to be told the same thing that you know the answer to?
And you know, that's a good segue into what I'm going to cover next. You and I chatted before this, and we talk about reevaluating. And what fascinates me about your life and your journey is that you always had to reevaluate due to some type of event or circumstance, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to talk about those circumstances, but to translate, that's why I love your story, because so many entrepreneurs go through the same thing. I go through it every week. You have to reevaluate, right?
Absolutely.
You have to reevaluate. You have to reassess. You can't get complacent. And so take me back. We all know the infamous play. We know the infamous play where I think you probably had to do the hardest evaluation maybe you had done in your life.
I
I
had
don't
to look at
know.
myself.
You had to look at yourself, but take me right before that play, meaning leading up to it. You're on top of the world,
Yep.
right? You're getting paid 7 figures, correct? Maybe you thought you were invincible at the time. I don't know.
Absolutely.
I mean, who wouldn't, right?
No,
I
no,
mean, you're
absolutely.
making, you're young, you're a terrific athlete, you're famous, and you're perfecting your craft. And then all of a sudden, the famous incident happens.
It ends.
It ends.
It ends.
It ends
I mean, it
with a
ends
blink of an
very
eye.
abruptly.
It ends very abruptly.
Um,
What were you feeling besides the pain? But what were you feeling outside of that? Let's say the day, 2 week after that.
Sense of loss.
Mm-hmm.
I had convinced myself, being an MVP of the league, man of the year, I believe in '84 I was the highest paid player in the National Football League, including bonuses that somebody had reported, or I was in the top 2 or 3.
Sure.
So I was making money. I had the headlines, I had TV commercials, doing TV shows, doing movies. You know, I really became an ego out of control.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the world revolved around me.
Mm-hmm.
I was the most important thing to this football team. They couldn't survive without me. Remember, Joe Gibbs had just taken over in '81. Now we win a championship in '82. We're back in '83. We win the division in '84. And I was in the midst of a lousy season, but I had sort of become very self-consumed with my own accomplishments.
Sure.
Until all of a sudden, November 18th, 1985 rolled around, and my world stopped. And what I do is I try and analogize this for people. Picture where you were in March, January, February, March of 2020.
Mm.
Where are you today? And where did it start? When April rolled around in May, we figured by the end of May, maybe June, this thing will pass
Yes.
and we'll move on. And it isn't, and it hasn't, and it won't for a while.
Right.
We've come to the grips with that reality.
Sure.
But for me, when my leg was broken, it's interesting to lay there on the field. I had no feeling from the knee down. The endorphins kicked in, and I had nothing. My leg was completely numb.
Mm-hmm.
I had people around me. Up until that night, I was the starting quarterback of at that time, the Washington Redskins football team. I was a world champion.
Did you know how severe it was when
No.
you were laying on the
See,
field?
I'd broken my leg in Canada. I'd already broken my leg
Really?
in 1970, but only one bone.
The same leg?
Same leg.
Okay.
I broke the fibula. There are 2 bones that are the fibula and the tibula.
Right.
The fibula is what's called a non-weight-bearing bone,
Mhm.
and whoever called it the non-weight-bearing bone has never broken it because I'm telling you, you cannot stand on it. But
Yeah.
I was back playing in 6 weeks.
Okay.
So I had gone through the quote-unquote broken leg thing, and I figured I'd be back.
Mhm.
And then I tried to come back, and it just didn't work out. I really started to get to where I could move again after 2 years.
Wow. Yeah.
But I broke it in November, and in 1986, I tried to work out for the team in April, and I just couldn't move.
Couldn't do it.
And so they released me, and I never really played again after that.
Right.
But I thought very highly of myself.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, my world changed, and I had to look internally and figure out who I was. It forced me, I had an outside event
Mhm.
forced me to examine myself
Mhm.
and say, who are you? What are you? Who do you want to be? And I didn't want to be the person. I looked at the person that I had become and the direction I was going in. And I didn't want to be that person. And I think the hardest thing to do is self-evaluate.
Sure.
The hardest thing to do is stand in front of a mirror and look at yourself and be honest with yourself.
Mhm.
We can BS the heck out of that person.
Sure.
Well, we convince them anything's going on, but I couldn't and I didn't think my career was over.
You didn't think your
I
career
did
was
not,
over.
but there was a sense of loss. What I was saying is now everything that I thought I was Joe Theismann, football player. That's how I was identified. That's how I gained my notoriety.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, what I thought I was now stripped away from me, stripped down dead naked.
Mhm.
And really, I had to start over as a person. I had to start over in my life because I hadn't really invested in business. I had restaurants, but I had my name on them more than anything. I didn't operate them. And to this day, I still have one, and my name is on it. And I went through 40 years of, it's the most expensive master's degree you can get in business when
Right.
you're in the restaurant business. I went through that process.
Yeah.
And so I had to start over.
Right.
But it's almost like you pour the bucket out. All that stuff that was in the bucket that you accumulated through your life and through the years and experiences. Now all of a sudden you pour the bucket out, and now you got to fill it up again.
You got to fill it up again.
It needs to. It's filled up with some of the same stuff.
Mhm.
The confidence, the belief, the willing to do anything you can to get
Mhm.
something done.
Mhm.
The drive is all there.
Mhm.
But then it's how do you include other people in your life? I've really come to grips with the fact that we are not put on this earth to be served, but we're here on this earth to serve others.
Mm.
What can we do for other people?
Right.
I had a buddy. Let me tell you a quick story. A buddy of mine comes up to me one day and he says, "Joe, you think you're a success?" I said, I spent 23 years in broadcasting, so I guess from a longevity standpoint, maybe I would say I was a success.
Mhm.
I've been speaking as a motivational speaker for over 40 years, trying to share experiences with people to help them through their lives. So, doing 40 years and still doing it at this point at a pretty good clip, I guess you could say. So.
Yeah.
And then
Absolutely.
having won a championship and been an MVP of the league, I guess you could say through my 15 years of professional football, I was a success. He said, actually, Joe, those were aspirations. You had an aspiration to be a great football player. You had an aspiration to be a teacher as a motivational speaker. You had that same aspiration as a broadcaster to teach people about the game of football
Mhm.
so they could understand it and enjoy it more.
Mhm.
Those were aspirations. He said success, and this is what really resonated with me. He says success comes when you've reached a certain point in your life and you start to give back.
Mm.
And I look at you now, Chris, and here we sit, in your offices and talking about, entrepreneurs and finance. What you've done is taken the knowledge that you have and had other people come and share the stage with you, so to speak.
Mhm.
But you're sharing experiences with people. So to me, you've accomplished that second level of quote unquote success.
And it's funny, no one's ever put it to me that way, or reciprocated it back to me that way. So what you just said, I have to ask you, are you a fan, or have you read any books by Andrew Carnegie?
No, I haven't, but
Okay.
I'm very familiar with it.
So what you said
I
is
mean, that's
kind of
the
his.
first-
So people ask, who's my mentor? Sometimes who have I looked up to? And I come from a very poor background. I didn't come from a silver spoon, and I never graduated college. I actually left college and never looked back. I left and I started a business, and here we are today. That's a different story. But his philosophy, Andrew Carnegie's philosophy, and he started out from nothing either. He was an immigrant, and then he came here, and he was arguably one of the richest people that we've ever known. Right? His philosophy was: you get in, you work hard, you find a craft, you perfect it, and then you dominate that industry, which he did. And then the next stage, once you've made it, so to speak, you give back.
Exactly.
And that's why you see all the libraries, Carnegie Hall.
Well,
he gave back all as well.
Absolutely. And the thing about Carnegie too was, I mean, when you first start to speak, they teach speaking courses in school. I took two courses that really were invaluable to me: speech and argumentation at the University of Notre Dame. But you reference Carnegie. I mean, that's really the first reference that you see when it comes to being able to be a public speaker, to be able to explain stories, to tell stories, to be a storyteller. We're all storytellers.
Sure.
Les Brown, I mean, it doesn't matter who you are when it comes to speaking. Yeah. You're a storyteller.
Sure.
And how well you tell your story and how well people can relate to your story is really where you get a chance to continue to do things.
Sure. Absolutely.
And you make a great point. I mean, you look at, I think let's take the world of football. Look at how many guys who have been free agents. Tom Brady, a 7th round pick. The Denver Broncos have had umpteen running backs that have had great success, some in the Hall of Fame. Right. But yet started as free agents. I mean, they did an interesting study. In the National Football League, like 15% of first-round picks wind up making it. When you move down to the 5th or 6th round, it's like 65% of the National Football League is made up of 5th and 6th round picks. And I've always said this: you give me a number 1 pick with a 6th round attitude, and I'll show you a Pro Bowler. You give me a 1st round pick with a 1st round attitude, and I'll show you a guy that's out of the game in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it really,
you know how it's similar here? I love that analogy. Here, I would have a guy that is hungry, has some experience, but doesn't have an MBA in my field of finance. I would take that guy all day long than a guy coming out of college with an MBA.
See, I think you can teach them you can teach them finance, but you can't teach them about life.
Well, and that's my next. It's funny. That's my next question to you. I've been dying to ask this question. Leading up to this interview at night, I've been sitting around and go, what's the one question to ask Joe? The one golden question. And here's my golden question. You ready for it?
Sure.
You've accomplished a lot in life, and now later in life, you are an expert motivational speaker. You're a motivator. You have a great story. People identify with you, and I believe people. You can lead people, and you could captivate people's attention, and that's an ability. Kudos to you that I think you have. I'm a firm believer, and it's okay to disagree. I'm a firm believer that you can't teach motivation. And hear me out. It's either you have it or you don't. And if you don't have the motivation, there has to be something deep down in your genetic makeup that causes you to move forward and progress with the task at hand. Meaning, it has to be a primal instinct, right? And in other words, it has to be either a fight or flight syndrome. Now, you can get motivation, but again, there has to be some sort of event that pushes you to want to do it at the end. I mean, you can learn motivation, you can hear other people's stories, but do you agree with me that you really can't teach motivation? I think that you either have it or you don't. And if you don't, you got to find something deep down inside that will cause you to get off your ass and execute and do what you got to do.
I think the term teach motivation is interesting because people they'll motivate themselves if they want to.
Right.
So it has to come from you.
It has to come from somewhere.
It has to come from somewhere. I agree with you on that. To be able to teach motivation, you have to show people the journey that you've been on, which in my book called How to Be a Champion Every Day, 6 Timeless Keys to Success. I talk about the parallels between the world of sports, the world of business, and our own lives. And it's, I had a friend send me an email yesterday. He said his 12-year-old daughter wants to read it, and he's in his 50s and 60s. And it covers a range of stories about the NFL. General Powell is a contributor on leadership. I mean, different people. This isn't all Joe Theismann.
Right.
And what it is I think to motivate people in the National Football League, as an example, I agree with you. I think it's in you somewhere. Now, some people, they may not have it. It may just be empty. It may not be something that you want to be motivated to do.
Well, then it may not be hungry.
But you see, how are people get hungry if you keep putting food on the table?
Exactly.
How do you if every time you sit down at the table there's food there and you don't feel the pains in your stomach? Number one, how do you appreciate it? How do you appreciate what's there?
Well, for me, when I dropped out of college, I had to figure stuff out. I had to figure stuff out. That was the motivation. I didn't have a fallback plan.
I had to do that when I got hurt.
That's what I mean. That's why I'm circling back around this. So you had to reevaluate yourself, and you had to do something.
That's really where we are today. I think this conversation that we're having is so timely with what's going on in society today.
Absolutely.
With the COVID, with the pandemic, with the quarantining, with the not being able to go to work.
Right.
At the end of March, we were all doing something.
Right.
I venture to say over these last 8 months, roughly, what we were doing is not a part of our life anymore. But here's the thing that's important, Chris, is you have to look back and be honest with yourself. You have to look back at where you were.
Mm-hmm.
Where was I? And now you have to seize this opportunity. Seize this opportunity that's there for you, because life will never be the same.
Right.
But you have to take the positive experiences that you've had, the work ethic that you've had, the relationships that you've built, the way you've structured your life, the way you've structured your business life,
mm-hmm.
the way you've structured your personal life.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take those positives and move them forward, and they will not be the same. I don't call that change anymore. I call that opportunity. You have to seize this opportunity
mm-hmm.
to reevaluate where you're going, what you want to do. Now, some people are motivated to do that. And I do believe that motivation has to come from within. Can you teach motivation? You can't, I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make that horse drink the water.
Exactly.
So what I can do is I can present stories to people. Mm-hmm. You can have classes on motivation. Mm-hmm. You can do everything. But if you don't want to do it,
you're not going to be able to do it.
There isn't.
You're not going to be able to do it.
We can do about that. You're going to do what you want to do. And this is where, some of us have been forced basically to make decisions that we necessarily would have never made on our own. And that's basically what this pandemic has done.
Well, and I think it's called a valuable lesson out of this pandemic, even in my industry. And I'm a firm believer, the biggest killer in business is complacency.
Oh gosh, yes.
When you're, and even in sports too, right?
Absolutely.
If you're complacent, the way I look at business, and tell me from the sports side, the way I look at business, what keeps me not getting in that complacent zone, no matter how successful you are in business, there's always people behind you, the Lawrence Taylors. There's always the Lawrence Taylors that are looking to kick your ass. Meaning other businesses looking to take you over. And if you're not innovating and constantly pushing forward, you're going to be taken over, or you're going to be run over, and that's it. And same thing with sports, right? There's always that next guy that's looking to fulfill a position or work out harder than you, right?
Exactly. There's if you, and this is what I think what makes Nick Saban so unique as a coach down in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Just to use a college there. Yeah. He has high school All-Americans all over the place. Jonathan Allen is a defensive tackle with the Washington football team, number one pick for the Washington team 4 years ago, I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago. And he said, if you didn't practice hard, you didn't play hard, they had somebody who was just as good as you, if not better, that was going to step on the field. You'd never have your job. So the instant you slacked off, it was over.
Right.
It's like when I played the position of quarterback, I never worried about anybody taking my job. I was more than happy to work with anybody who was a backup. Didn't bother me one bit. Mm-hmm. I knew that I could outwork them. Mm-hmm. I knew that I also didn't let anybody else take snaps in practice but me. Because
that's called it. Yeah.
It's called preservation.
Preservation intelligence.
This is my philosophy, right? If Coach Gibbs didn't know that the guy behind me could play, then he would be reluctant to take me out if I was struggling. But if I let this guy show what he could do in practice, then if I got struggling a little bit, the coach may go, let's give this other guy a shot, a little change up, see what's going on. Yeah. So that was part of it. Plus the other thing is we have such a limited amount of snaps in practice. Mm-hmm. You'd have maybe 35 snaps total over a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not enough to look at all the defensive coverages and to get the timing right. That's why we see football. That's why I think we see teams that had continuity and consistency doing better than those that have been thrown. Even the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as great as Tom is, and Tom learns every day.
Sure, still learn.
That's the perfect example for everybody. Look at Tom Brady's life, 21 years in this business. Drew Brees, every day they sit down and evaluate themselves and they say, what can I do better?
Right.
How can I play my position better?
Right.
If you think of your job right now, whoever is listening out there, if you think of your job as a position in sports, how can I play this position better?
Right.
What can I do to play this position better? That should motivate you. I talk about different things in my presentations about motivation. I think pride is a motivating factor. Fear is a motivating factor. Recognition is a motivating factor. And certainly there's the economic part of it. There's the monetary part.
Absolutely.
How do you get motivated to do the things you want to do? But this is the other thing too, is you need to be in an environment where you enjoy going to work. That's changed now. I believe we will be back. People will be more face-to-face as we move forward, but it'll never be what it was. But I think you have to enjoy the people you work with. I can walk into a locker room. Even today, I guarantee you, 30 some odd years later, left broadcasting, 7, 8 years ago. I used to walk into a locker room and I could feel the energy or lack thereof. I could feel the camaraderie
feel the energy,
or the lack thereof.
Right.
You walk into an office and you get a sense that people really like being there.
Yeah.
Or you get with somebody on the phone, or you're on a meeting.
Sure.
You're on a Zoom meeting or whatever, a Skype, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And there's a sense of enthusiasm and excitement. You sense that to me is going to be a successful company.
Oh, for sure.
And made up of successful people.
Absolutely.
But if you get this kind of deflated kind of thing, it's like you don't have a chance. You don't stand a chance.
You don't. And it's so interesting. Sports is not that much different than business.
That's why I wrote the book.
That's why you wrote the book.
The world of sports, the world of business, and our own lives when you stop and think about it.
Right.
I base it off of the topics that are in the book are opportunity, goals, attitudes, customer service, which is really people relationships. That's all it is. I mean, you look at your business. It's all about people relationships. It's all about trust.
It is.
When you think of entrepreneurship, it's about taking a chance.
Right.
Be willing to step outside the box and say, I have a passion for this.
Yeah.
I want to do this.
Yeah.
And people, and believe me, people by human nature will come up and say, oh, you really sure you want to do that? Geez, you got such a great situation now. You really want, I mean,
why would you want to do that?
Why would you want to do that? And all they're saying is, I wouldn't do it. All they're saying, but you're not them. And this is the thing. One word that I think is sort of escaped society to a large degree is respect. We need to respect somebody's opinion. We need to respect who they are, the person they are, their choices that they make in their life.
Sure.
We need to respect those. Don't force your views and your feelings about a situation or a circumstance on someone else. Allow them to be able to be who they are, who they want to be. And then let's sit down and you know what, Chris, let's talk about it.
Right.
There's a couple things that I'm hearing in society today, which I think is important. One is listen. Listen to what's being said. And then after you listen, take some action to make a difference. Now, you and I were having this conversation earlier. I hope and pray that we are never in a situation again where we have these circumstances to live under. These last 8 months, this pandemic that we're dealing with. I hope and pray that no one ever has to go through this. But if you waste any more of this time in not sort of reevaluating your personal life, your professional life, the things you want, the things that are important to you, if you waste this now, you'll have thrown away a tremendous opportunity.
Sure.
Tremendous opportunity.
That from the likes of we may not see in our lifetime.
Now,
Again,
and we don't want to.
Assuming we don't want
Some
to.
of us may not have that much more left.
No, you sure do.
Well, I'm waiting for that pill. At 200, I still want to put the peg in the ground and tee off. That's all that's important to me. But
half of it's attitude.
It's
attitude. I come across a lot of successful people, and I even have some mentors. And one common trait that I always get is we all have a good attitude.
Yeah.
Like, what successful person have you met? You've been around a lot of famous people that are successful or even in business that have a shitty kind of lackadaisical attitude. I mean, I can't think of one.
I don't.
People that are very successful, unless you're giving it, unless you're just saying, here you go.
And it's interesting about giving it.
Yeah.
Is those that have been given the opportunity, they try and grow it.
You try to grow.
Even though, I mean, those are the ones that sit on it and just take it for granted that it's going to be there.
Right.
I didn't take for granted that my career was going to go on. I was 35 years when I got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the end was close when it came to my career.
Mm-hmm.
Ended a lot more abruptly than I anticipated it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a sense of loss. And I went through the woe is me stuff.
Right.
I just signed I signed a brand new 5-year contract worth $5 million.
But I will tell you something. I did some research on you. It shows how even in business you have to prepare. You had an insurance policy, did you not?
I did.
And talk about preparation.
Well,
aren't you glad that happened? I mean, come on.
Now let me tell you, this is where I think you and your advisors and you and your services that you offer to people are very important. Here's the story. I signed my new contract in 1984, Mr. Jack Ken Cook. I go out to his house. I make 4 trips out to his house. Finally,
Very wealthy individual.
very well, and a round house. He used to own the Lakers. He owned
Wow.
the Chrysler Building in New York.
Mm-hmm.
He owned one of the big horse farms.
Mm-hmm.
So, I go out to his house finally to sign my deal. It's a round house sitting there. He puts the contract down in front of me. And he says, what do you think? And it was $1 million, $1.5 million bonus, $1 million, 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Mr. Cook, this is unbelievable. He says, no, it's not. It's fantastic. That was the way Jack was very expressive. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll tell you what else I want you to do. He said, I want you to insure this contract. I said, Mr. Cook, I've played for you for 11 years and I've never missed a practice. I've never missed a game. One of the proudest things I ever did was
It's your work ethic.
I played in 163 consecutive games. I was sick, believe me, hurt,
Mm-hmm.
bruised, busted thumbs, busted collarbones, still wanted to play. He said, I want you to insure this contract. I said, Mr. Cook, you know I'm going to play for you. He said, Joe, it is a prudent business decision. He said, the premiums on this contract are less than 0.5% of the value of this contract. And here's the other advice I want to give you. Do not deduct it from your insurance. If premiums are deducted from your insurance, if you get hurt and you get the money,
Mm-hmm.
you will have to pay taxes on it. If you do not, 100% of that money is yours. A year later, my leg was broken.
Wow.
And that insurance policy, because the 4 years of the contract were gone.
Right.
But that particular insurance policy became the foundation of the finances that I've been able to work with going forward in my life.
Wow.
And it was because of his advice. And this is why I say with you and what you do for people, you have no idea how you help people.
Mm.
I think you sort of get an idea, but I don't think you really understand the impact that you and the businesses that you have can impact people's lives. When you talk about finances with people, you're talking about the most important element they have. Without it, you aren't going to eat. Without it, you aren't going to have shelter. Without it, you aren't going to have transportation. Without it, the kids don't go to school.
Right.
How do you protect the asset?
Yeah.
What's the best way to look at it?
Yeah.
All of us want to be able to, take the dice and shoot the dice a little bit and see what's there.
Yeah.
But you don't want to do it when you put everybody at risk.
Right.
Yourself, your family, your life, your livelihood.
Right.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah. So, well, that's an amazing story. I mean, that's just an amazing story to me because
it's in the book.
It's in the book, yeah. And I encourage everybody to get the book. I mean, it's a fascinating story. It just, again, another parallel to business.
Yes,
right?
that's what it is.
You've got to be prepared. So there's a lot of businesses that unfortunately are no longer here with us because of COVID, because they didn't. And it's easy to say this now, but they didn't prepare. Like they never thought anything could ever impact that business. Like who ever would have thought the airline business would?
Well,
Hotel business.
How about the people that work in hotels? The restaurant business. Look at how it's impacted us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're scared that they may pull it back from phase 3 to phase 2 to phase 1. You don't know.
You just don't know.
So it happens. But and I think that there's a lot more trials and tribulations going forward because we don't know to what extent. And you don't know what's going to happen going forward. But I do feel this way. Nobody could see this.
No, true.
There was no way that you could foresee something like this impacting your business, the mom and pop operations.
Right.
the destruction of some of the businesses. I mean,
Right.
just the flat destroying a business in a city because you're mad at something. I mean,
Yeah.
these are the people
Yeah.
that served you.
Yeah. Well,
Now all of a sudden you're going to now they're
I
gone.
never understood destroying your home community. I mean, there's a way to do things.
Yeah,
Protest, okay, protest, but the
But the
rioting
destruction-
doesn't make sense. The destruction of your own.
but
Community, yeah.
nobody could foresee this coming.
Right.
So you can't say, oh well, you didn't make plans. Nobody makes plans for being shut down for 8 months
Right. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or 6 months
Right.
or even 4 months. No, you have a contingency plan
Sure.
for a what if. This is not on that list of what ifs.
Right.
Of what's happened. So unfortunately, there are a lot of now, but here's the other thing. There are people out there now that really have to do what you and I have been talking about. They have to evaluate what they can do going forward with their life. What now you may have to do something you don't want to do.
Or uncomfortable with.
Very uncomfortable with.
Right.
You may be forced to do that. And you may learn to find comfort with it. You may learn to tolerate it. We may get to a point where things swing around a little bit and you can get back to what you did. You can't be afraid to roll your sleeves up and basically start over if you have to.
Right.
I mean, and trust me, people work their life to get to a certain comfort level.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden somebody yanks the rug out from underneath them. And it's like, oh man, I've got to go back and do it again. The one saving grace is you did it once. What's to say you can't do it again?
Can't do it again.
Maybe it won't be at the level where it was,
Right.
but it is something you are passionate about. It's something you love, and it's an opportunity to be able to find value in yourself.
Right.
Right now, one of the toughest things, and there's so many friends of mine, I see it, they're just struggling with themselves. They're struggling with that inner feeling of my confidence. My confidence is shaken. Believe in who you are. Believe in the things you love. And if it's take the foundation of what you built to get where you are and just move it over. I'll give you a classic example. Joe Gibbs, my football coach, won 3 world championships, took 4 teams to Super Bowls, won 3 world championships in a span of 11 years. Okay, he's in the Professional Football Hall of Fame. Then he decides to get into NASCAR. He wins multiple races in NASCAR. All kinds of Winston Cup. They have all kinds of different names now for him. He's in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. You have football and you have NASCAR.
Conquer 2 separate industries.
2 different worlds.
Yeah.
2 different worlds. One relies so much on the individuals and the preparation. The other relies on the machine.
Right.
I talked to a lot of NASCAR people about this.
I have friends. I have a couple drivers that I know.
They're great, but here's the thing: is unless that car is running, I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
Jeff Gordon went through. I had a chance to spend a little time with Jeff. Jeff went through a really tough period because the cars kept breaking down.
Yeah.
Not Jeff.
Right.
But if you don't have, I mean, that to me, how reliant can you be? I mean, at 200 miles an hour. I got to tell you a funny story. So we're doing a broadcast down in Charlotte, North Carolina. And they gave me a chance to go to Richard Petty driving school. So I was going to drive a race car around the track.
Okay. Now you're talking my language.
So I get it. They take you through a training course. They take you out in a van, drive you around. It's 2.5 mile track. So now I'm in the car, and I got a pace car ahead of me. A guy driving, and he keeps waving at me. Come on, get closer and get closer. Well, I'm not going to be like, I'm not doing that. But unbelievable the way these cars hang on the track. So anyway, so I get up to about 140 miles an hour, and I think I'm just kicking. Man.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm so full of myself.
Yeah.
So we do the game that next night, and Jeff is in the booth with us. So I'm sitting there, and I'm sort of bragging a little bit. And I took the car, did 140 at it. I said, "How fast do you guys go?" He said, "We usually run somewhere around 200." And we also have about 42 other cars on the track with us. And I just sort of sank in my chair.
Yeah, it makes you feel.
You talk about being humble without getting slapped in the face. I got slapped in the face.
So,
but it's unbelievable.
To share that, a buddy of mine is Kurt Busch.
Sure.
Right? And we do these, we're into cars. Outside of them, I'm not a NASCAR driver, but we're into cars. And we do these car rallies. And Kurt and I, with a bunch of other guys, we get together. And we all have, nice cars, supercars, and we go. It's like a vacation. We go cross country. And I never forget it. I'm driving, and Kurt's in his car, and he has a fancy car, and I got my car, and we're driving on the highway. And think of it as like a motorcycle gang, but really nice cars. Yeah, car gang. And we're driving, and I'm thinking I'm driving fast, and Kurt is on my ass. I mean, and I'm talking about I couldn't even see the hood of his car in back of me, right?
Yeah.
And I said to the we call them co-pilots, listed driver to take along the trip, and I go, Jesus Christ! I go, Kurt's on my ass, and he goes, Chris, you forget. He does this for a living. If you look at NASCAR, and
how close
they're
are they?
this close,
At
going 200 miles an hour,
I know.
and then it made me think of things like, yeah, he's a professional race car driver. That's right,
Oh, man.
So
It's unbelievable. I mean, unless you've gone through that experience and been in the car,
right.
And what happens is it's interesting. They have a line at each of the turns,
Mhm.
and you aim for the line.
Oh yeah,
And mentally, here you are doing 140 miles an hour.
you have to look ahead, not at the road.
No, you don't.
Yeah,
look
at the
at
line.
You keep an eye, and the car actually takes the turn for you.
Correct. It's banked.
But unless you've done that a few times,
Oh yeah.
very disconcerting.
How exhausting is it too? People don't realize when you race a car,
Absolutely.
those guys do it for 2-3 hours. I know for me, 3 or 4 laps, and you're mentally exhausted, especially when you're going that fast.
And the thing is your focus has to be so pinpoint at every instance because
Correct.
you can't afford a moment's lapse,
Right.
or else boom.
Right.
I mean, it's
Right.
just it's funny. I mean,
You talk about not being complacent, and I don't see your life as ever being complacent. I mean, there are certain things that when I read about your career outside of football, that again you're forced to reevaluate, right? And one thing I'll bring up is you're with ESPN a while, right?
Yeah.
And I read somewhere that that day where they called you in and they let you go.
yeah.
So that's another life event.
After I just signed a brand new contract.
After you just signed a brand new contract, right?
Talk about something coming. It came out of the blue.
Came out of the blue. You weren't expecting it,
Not at
right?
all.
And so again, it's a parallel to what happened in your career when you got hurt. I mean, you didn't expect that
No,
night, right?
no.
And you didn't expect this. You got called into an office, and then all of a sudden you got
But
let
let me
go.
interject. Let me just interject.
Go ahead.
But what you do in those moments, and what I did, I went back to the foundation of what drove me initially.
Hmm.
My belief in my abilities, my willingness to work hard. There's no replacement for hard work.
Right.
There's no replacement for rolling your sleeves up and going after something.
Right.
And Tom Watson, the founder of IBM, said this. He said, work the first 8 hours of the day for survival.
Mm.
Everything after that is an investment in your future.
Mm.
I quote that in my speeches.
Mhm.
When I talk about confidence,
Mhm.
you have to invest that little extra time. I wasn't gifted mentally, and academically to be able to study just a couple hours and ace a test. I needed to put a ton of time in.
Ton of work.
When I broadcasted football games, I spent 60 hours a week preparing for a game.
Wow.
I had a big spotting board in front of me. I
Mhm.
did all the work myself. Heights, weights, where players went to schools, notes with meeting with coaches, studying film and everything else.
Mhm.
If I didn't prepare that way, I don't think I could have done a broadcast. I'd have been so nervous about it. Now, here's the thing. I spend 60 hours a week getting ready for a football game.
Mhm.
Let's say you get a game like, by the way, go Irish, okay?
Yeah.
You get a game like the Clemson-Notre Dame football game just this past weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, you get that game, and you don't need a board.
Right.
This is pure entertainment, pure energy, pure excitement. Maybe you have information. Maybe you use 5% of that.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
which means I spent 60 hours that whole week getting ready for 5%. But you know what? If I didn't have that, and it was a lousy game,
Mhm.
it was let's say a giant Washington Redskins, but a Washington
A Washington
football game,
Giant game, yeah.
just a Washington Giant game.
Yeah.
It wasn't a nail biter,
Right,
Okay,
right.
Then you're using
You gotta
about
fill it.
60-70%.
Right. Preparation.
So I mean, it's
Well, I got to tell you, and growing up when you were on TV, I remember watching you. I mean, on ESPN, and and I'm not saying this to kiss your ass. I'm saying this genuinely. It showed. It absolutely showed.
I had some great partners too.
You did, but I mean, it just showed you were on top of your game, and you put that hard work. Hearing it from you now, how much work you put in going into those games. I think it's huge.
To me, you owe it to the fans.
Right.
To be able to, and I wanted to be a teacher, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way I could teach would be to have the knowledge. Having played it is one thing.
Right.
But then the other part of it is can you share it.
Mhm.
And when I first got, people would say, Theismann, you talk too much. You talk too much on television. And I did when I got into business because I had no idea. You have to talk in sound bites.
Right.
There's a discipline that is necessary. And believe me, I'm listening to guys today, they throw that discipline out the window. What you have to do is there's the play-by-play guy, and then there's the color commentator. The color commentator needs to shut up and allow the play-by-play person to be able to sort of set the stage, down in distance, where the ball is, anything else. And then you comment on what happened.
Right.
They cross these lines.
Well, it was like that. You remember Monday Night Football where they brought in, who's the comic they brought in to sit with, the hell was his name?
Dennis Miller?
Dennis Miller. You remember those days?
Oh, yeah. Listen, I did Monday night.
Yeah.
I remember I did
Yeah.
Sunday night, I did Monday night,
Yeah.
I did Thursday night, I did playoff games for ABC, NBC. I worked for CBS. My first job was at CBS.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember John Madden, still is, I think, the standard by which people are
Sure.
measured, and John should be. It's interesting because I'd sit and talk to him as much as I could to learn as much as I could. And then once he signed his new contract there, I knew I wasn't going to be able to be elevated to that other chair. So, I had a chance to go on and worked at ESPN for 20 plus years. I had a great run there. We started football there.
Right.
We used to do 8 games, and then we did 8 in the studio and 8 on the road, and then we got to 16. And I loved every minute of it. I had great mentors there. John Wildhack, who's now the athletic director at Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
Fred Godelli, who does Thursday Night Football now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Jay Rothman, who Jay did Monday Night Football up until this past year. So, there were 3 great producers who really taught. They teach the nuances. They really took the time to teach the nuances of the business.
Right.
Because every business has a nuance to it.
Absolutely does.
Every business has something that, you can learn from older people. And this is something I say to individuals who have been in a business for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Find somebody to mentor.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to what we're talking about,
Yeah.
the sharing part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you've done terrific. You're doing well. Find someone, 1 or 2 or whatever people, and just take the time to teach them some of the things that you had to go through. Maybe you circumvent that a little bit for them,
well,
and they can get where they want to go quicker.
Yeah, and I'll share. And you and I, one thing you don't really know about me, I allude a little bit, but I wasn't born with a silver spoon. But there was a point in my life when I was really young. Went through some things with family when I was really young. My family did, and I spent some time in a shelter for 2 years. And one thing that motivates me, talk about I'm not the smartest egg in the room. I'm certainly not fully college educated. But one thing that that drives me to do hard work is that event, and that's that. Remember we just talked about that motivation.
Sure.
What's the motivation? Where does it come from? For me, one day I was sitting in class, about 8 years old, and I was living in a shelter for 2 years. And the shelter was not the cleanly, as you can imagine, it wasn't clean. And remember, I felt something in my shoe. The hell's in my shoe? My sneaker at the time. I took off my sneaker and I went like this. 2 roaches popped. Scurried on the floor, and the whole class made fun of it. You're 8 years old at the time, right?
Sure.
I never forget that. To me, that was a low point in my life. And because I remember what that felt like. I remember the stigma, especially in school. Kids are not nice, especially at that age.
Yeah.
And for me, that's my motivation. That's what propelled me to work harder and harder and harder and harder, because I wasn't the smartest egg, but I knew if I put in more hours and more concentration on what I want to do and what I envision and what I want to build, eventually I believe in manifestation. You manifest it, you work hard to get there.
Right.
That's my burning flame, if you will. Doesn't matter if I make $1 billion. I never want to go back to that place when I was 8 years old. And that keeps me going and going and going.
What's interesting too, Chris, is some people will never have experiences like you and I have, starting from a simple place, let's say.
Simple place.
A very simple place.
Right.
And then trying to continue to improve and move forward and get better and better of who we are as people and the businesses that we're in. Some people may not get there, but it doesn't mean that you can't motivate yourself to do something better. Don't wait for that moment.
Well, and that's what I wanted to ask you. The incident that happened with Lawrence Taylor.
I love you call it an incident.
It's an incident. I don't want to call it a play. It's an incident.
People have called it an accident.
No, I call it an incident. Okay. Is that one of your burning flames? What you took, your lesson from that, just moving forward in your illustrious career and as a speaker? Meaning, like, you never know what's going to happen.
No.
And has that been a flame for you to say, I'm going to, I'm going to reevaluate life differently no matter what I'm doing?
Yeah, it was I call it a line of demarcation in my life.
There you go.
It really was. It was the point where I didn't know what I had become until I had a chance to stop doing what I was doing and reflect back on it. And this is my point right here, right now, is what I'm saying to everybody out there. This is your line of demarcation. This is your point where the world you knew stopped 8 months ago.
Right.
Now you have to look back at that world of what did you do? Who was I? What did I want? I talk about all the relations. And now where do you want to go forward?
Where do you want to go?
What are you going to do? I get friends of mine come up to me, and even when I do speeches, people say, man, you're always up. You're this up guy. You're always up. I'm never always up. I'm like everybody else. I have days where I'm just like, man, I can't. It's a lousy day.
Yeah,
okay?
Sure. We all.
But here's the thing. We all go through peaks and valleys.
Right.
I just choose not to stay in the valley very long. There are people that want to stay in the valley and woe is me. Why did this happen to me?
The blame game. The blame game.
It's
the
not
blame game.
It's not my fault.
Right. It's easier.
It doesn't matter whose fault it is. You're in it right now. So pick yourself up and get your rear end out of the valley and start climbing to the top of the mountain again.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't think I can do it. Why? Well, first of all, you got to change that attitude.
Sure.
I don't think I can do it.
Right.
I don't, the word can't doesn't exist in my mind. I left high school at 152 pounds. I entered the University of Notre Dame at 157 pounds. I was one of 13 quarterbacks. I went to my room my freshman year and I wrote down on a piece of paper, I will be the greatest quarterback that ever plays at the University of Notre Dame. If somebody saw that, they would have committed me to an institution. They said, you are totally, absolutely crazy. Fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter what other people think.
Doesn't.
And it doesn't matter whether I was or was not at the university, but that was someplace I wanted to go. One of the things I talk about, and I believe this, is in sports, we write down goals. In business, we write down goals.
Right.
But yet in our own lives, we don't pick up a pen and write down what we want. Not a pencil, a pen. 98% of the people in this world today refuse to take a pen in hand and write down a goal.
You're right.
Because they're afraid to make a contract with themselves. Because now you all of a sudden have to you got
to face yourself in the mirror. What you said in the beginning of this.
That's what I'm talking. But I ask people and do it in 4 specific areas: professional, personal, spiritual, and financial. Professional, personal, spiritual, financial. What do you want? I believe that the physical universe can help you get where you want to go once you identify in the physical universe where you want to go. But if you're like and I call it a rudderless ship. If you're a rudderless ship floating through the seas, letting the currents take you one place to the next, you're never going to get where you want to go.
I amen to that.
I'm not saying 100% it's going to happen, but you sure got a better chance if you go that route.
Right. Well, and you know what? Tell me if you agree with this. And you're in the business of motivating people. You're in a business of elevating people and kind of getting people charged up and showing them maybe a clearer path to an end goal. But a lot of people in that business, you always hear and I'm sure you'll fill in the blanks. You always hear the words, follow your what?
Gut.
Well, gut, but what else? I'm talking about like a goal. You say, follow your dreams,
yep.
Right? You hear that a lot. Follow your dreams. If you follow your dreams, they'll come true, right? Well, my father always said, and he's a kind of an old school Italian. He fought in the Korean War. He's a Korean War veteran. He always said, listen, following your dreams is bullshit. He goes, following your dreams will get you killed. He goes, follow your actions, because it's your actions which will get you toward your dreams. And I live by that today, meaning so many people have that thing out there. I want to follow my dream. But if they don't have an action plan, if they don't put a plan together, just like football, you could say, okay, I want to get across that goal line. But if you don't have an action plan, a set of plays, a strategy, you're never going to get there.
To your father's point, I've never seen a bad game plan. All the years I've been in football, I've just seen lousy execution.
Lousy execution. Okay, that's a great point.
I mean, that's an analogy of what your dad was saying. It's the action. The plans are great. Goal. The thing is you have to have a direction.
Right.
There's a difference between goals, dreams, visions. They're all different.
Right.
But I think the first place you have to start for most people is take a pen and sit down. And you know what's funny?
I mean, writing that plan.
I tell people all the time, everybody says, I can do that. It's like writing a will.
Mm.
You think you can do it. You think you know what you want. You think you have it figured out until you actually have to sit down and put a pen in hand and put it on paper and say, these are the things that I want in my life. Now, all of a sudden, you have to stop and you have to think, what do I want?
Right.
Personally. What do I want professionally? What do I want spiritually? What do I want financially? Most people sort of reverse that.
Right.
You know, what do I want? I want money. Well, I hate to break the news to you, it doesn't grow on trees. You know,
It takes hard work.
I'm sorry about that. I mean, I wish I could help you in that
For
area.
99.9% of us, it's hard work.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
And so, but it's I mean, you and I could do a 10-hour podcast.
Yeah,
on
no,
all this stuff.
I
mean,
know.
it's just,
I know.
but it's so great from an entrepreneur standpoint. I admire so many people who are willing to take a chance. You have to be able to step. You have to be able to step outside those shackles that we put on ourselves and boundaries, and say, okay, I want to try this. And people tell me all the time, this especially after my 1-yard punt against the Chicago Bears. They say, you know what, Joe, you were a failure as a punter. I said, I've never had a failure in my life, only an educational experience that did not go my way.
I love that. I love that. I'm going to use that.
That's what it is.
I love that.
And what do you take from that experience?
Right.
That makes you better for the next one. You know, obviously they never let me punt again.
Yeah.
After 1 yard. So it was simple. Joe.
I mean, do you hold the record for the shortest punt, or does somebody else hold that?
Interestingly enough, oddly enough, I claim the record at 1 yard. But interestingly enough, Sean Landetta of the Giants, in the same spot at Soldiers Field in Chicago, attempted to kick a ball. I contend that he missed it. And because he didn't touch the ball, it cannot qualify as a punt. But he is credited with a -6 yard punt. Therefore, he supposedly is the worst kicker when it came to yards. I will not recognize Sean as because
he never touched it.
I don't think he did. I'm convinced he did. And I talked to him about it. And I told him, I said, you know, from one punter to another. People laugh at me, go, you can't even call yourself a punter. When you have a 1 yard punt, you can't call yourself a punter.
Well, but what I'm saying is that the glass half full side of that is I hold the record.
That's right.
I'll
argue all the time. I tell people, and I qualify. I said, I own the record for the shortest punt in the history of National Football.
Yeah.
So if you don't believe me, go ahead. You can Google it, and it'll say Sean like that. But I don't recognize that.
Yeah.
I don't recognize.
Wow. Well, you know, Joe, you know, this has been it's been something else. I mean, I've been looking forward to this, and it just to get you in the room and kind of share these ideas and shooting back and forth. Because I talk to a lot of people, but I think you and I share a lot of the same values and just outlook. And it's no different from being a professional football player and a great player to a business owner. I mean, it's the same thing.
The sports
it really is.
Our lives, they, like I said, that was the motivation for me behind the book. Is I taught for so many years, and then really the way it came about was in 1982 after we won the championship.
Yeah.
I started getting invited to a lot of different corporate events. And in conversations with people in the corporate world, vice presidents, presidents, CEOs, human resources, accounting, management, salespeople, I kept hearing these terms like, boy, we really have to set our goals.
Right.
And we really have to have the right kind of attitude with the right kind of people. And we need to create this relationship inside our company. People get confused about the term customer service. They forget that it actually occurs inside your company. That relationship isn't with people outside the company. You have to develop that people-people relationship inside the company. And then there's we have to work together as a team. Each department has to work together. And we've got to and I thought, well, shoot, that's the same stuff we talk about all the time in sports.
Yeah.
And when you really break it down in your life, as individuals, we need goals. As individuals, our attitudes are important. Our personal relationships with everybody are important. If you're in a part of a family, you're part of a team.
Right.
I mean, ever since we were born, we were part of a team.
Sure.
And then all of us need to figure out a way to get motivated. All of us need to figure out what gets us excited about the opportunity to seize life, to hop on that bull and hang on. and that's really where it came from.
Yeah.
It all came from just being around this world and saying, "Wow, we're all similar." And we preached it. I lived it forever.
So in your transition that you've been doing now, going around and giving speeches and places hiring you to give speeches and kind of educate and motivate their individuals or their workforce. What's the biggest joy you get out of that? What's the biggest joy you walk away? Is it what drives you to do that?
It's interesting when we had a chance to be live. People would come up and say, "I came here today not expecting to learn anything, but I want to thank you." Simple things like writing down goals.
Mm-hmm.
I've had CEOs write me letters and say, "I never thought about it."
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about people that run companies.
Yeah.
And it's like, I never thought about it. I fashion myself more of a Joey Appleseed. I just want to plant seeds for people.
Mm-hmm.
If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, great.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something to think about.
Sure.
And so it's basically people will say, you've given me a chance to think about things that I never really would have thought about before. And that to me is flattering. And it's not a male audience where it's all about football and everything. It's not a female audience. It's not a partner's audience.
Right.
It's people. It's for people. It's for young people.
Mm-hmm.
Like like I said, when I wrote it down at the age of 17, I wrote down I wanted to be the greatest that ever played. I wrote down my goal at that point. And the other thing too is we find out in our life that it isn't all about us as individuals. I'm going to say that's the thing. When my leg got broken, I just, I thought the world, it was it at the end of the world for me.
Yeah.
And I've done some TV shows. I thought about television and stuff like that. But I never thought it would be a reality. And then the opportunity came, and then I took the same work ethic that I took into sports, that I took into the world of business. And it's the only way I know how to do it.
And it's proven successful.
God bless my wife, Robin. I mean, she's been dealing with me for 27 years, knowing that I have there's one speed, and that's just, she'll say, let me just step to the side.
You know what? And here, I'm going to ask you for our listeners. I'm going to ask you for your advice on this, because people are wondering the same thing. I mean, those people that say are going to be entrepreneurs, let's say they're looking at this and they have a business idea, they want to do it,
sure,
and they have spouses. Or significant others, right? What advice could you tell that entrepreneur for that spouse? Because it's a tough thing for the spouse.
I think the spouse is I think my wife has the toughest job in the world.
Right.
Because when we go out to dinner, she's beautiful. She's drop dead gorgeous.
Yeah.
Smart, beautiful, wonderful, terrific, tremendous. When we go out to dinner or something, people come up to me and say hello. All of a sudden,
she has to share you.
She not only has to share me, but she has a stature about herself that is stunning.
Mm-hmm.
I have a resume. Okay, she has, and then now all of a sudden, even though she is everything that you could possibly want,
sure,
she's sort of second, and it's difficult. And I think
did she come into the relationship preparing for that, or was it kind of a shock to her?
No, I think it had to be a shock to her. I've never asked her, but it had to be a shock a little bit, because when you get people that are smart or intelligent or attractive or whatever, and all of a sudden they are no longer the center of attention, it changes. It potentially could change things. But she's unbelievable. She understands who I am and what I am,
and she lets you do your thing.
She allows me to be who I am.
That's great.
And I think that goes with that thing we were talking about before, respect. Is, and I say this I'm not a marriage counselor, but if you think you're going to enter into a relationship or a marriage or a partnership and think that you're going to change that person, you're kidding yourself. What you see is what you get. And if that's okay with you, then should be okay going forward for years to come. Because, I just learned a long time ago, people are who they are. And if you try and change them, all you do is create resentment.
Right.
So, and the other thing is be supportive.
Right.
And being, inclusive and supportive. If you were to say to your partner or wife, whatever it is, hey, I have this idea. What do you think about us doing this together? And then take and evaluate their opinion. You may not agree with it. And you might just have to sit down and say, I really want to do this. I mean,
Instead of just saying, hey, we're doing this.
that's exactly.
Yeah.
I really, really want to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know you don't agree, but I want to give it a try. And hopefully, if it's a relationship where they say, look, I don't necessarily see it the way you see it, but if you want to give it a try, I'll give you I'll give you my support, and then we'll see where we go.
Yeah.
I mean, you're sort of in it.
Well, because as you know, like if you're a business owner, it's almost a marriage in itself.
Oh,
I mean,
gosh,
you're married to that business. You got to give it time. You got to give it dedication.
The way it is for football.
Right.
I mean, it's
right.
like, I'm in meetings. I was at meetings at 7:30 in the morning till 5 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
And then, or between meetings and practice and everything else. And then you get home and then it's studying again. And it's like, I think of guys like baseball players, 162 games, gone forever. How about the NBA being in that bubble forever?
Right.
You better have a very understanding partner or wife.
Absolutely.
To be able to do what they did. I thought the NBA did an incredible job under very trying circumstances to present a product that was incredible.
Right.
And then, I remember watching, first time I ever saw anything but humans in the stands was Korean baseball. They had stuffed animals behind home plate. They had all these stuffed animals. And then now we started seeing cutouts and stuff.
Well, of like actual people. Yeah. And even some of the celebrities in the front row there.
Stick them all in the front row and everything. It was.
Right.
I thought it was creative. And of course, hockey, Tampa Bay won there. And, baseball.
Yeah.
And now football. We'll see what happens. I mean, we were sort of in professional football. We were a little bit lucky because of all of the big four sports, as we call them.
They had to do it first. They had to
they did it first. We could do it last.
Right.
We could
learn.
We could see what worked. We could see the protocols that worked.
Right.
I think you had to do it in college football. You had to start to figure out what you needed to do to fix it.
Right.
This is like I tell people all the time. They come into my restaurant in Virginia called Joe Theismann.
Mm-hmm.
They come in and people say, I don't want to say anything, but this was this way or this was that way. And I said, look, if you don't tell me, I can't fix it.
You mean like the cuisine?
Well, if the food if it was cold or something like that, it's like, why did you take that off the menu?
Yeah.
Or, whatever it might be.
Right.
It's like, if you don't tell me, I can't fix it.
Right.
So it's not, when I go into a restaurant, I say to somebody, the table's not clean or something. I don't want people to get upset. The fact of the matter is, I'd like to walk into a restaurant, because I want mine to be that way, where you sit down at a clean table, clean, sanitized table.
Well, you appreciate the feedback as a business owner too, right?
That's my point.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
All of us.
Yeah.
And it's like, and when you talk about finance and entrepreneurs, take your dream as an entrepreneur, take your dream and share it with people that you respect. Don't go it alone.
Right.
And people say, I don't need an investor. I'm not talking about investors. I'm not talking about partners.
Right.
I'm talking about ideas. I'm talking about people that you trust and respect their opinion.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Get your plan. We talk about get your plan out. Get your plan down.
Right.
Take the time to sit down with not one, not two, maybe get different opinions.
Sure.
Because then probably what your plan was when you sat down with the first person and your plan was when you sat down with the fourth person, there's going to be some tweaking done.
Because you get alternate views,
Absolutely.
alternate viewpoints.
And don't, one of my favorite things about leadership, this is a little saying. I love little sayings, okay? This is know what you don't know.
Mm.
Be willing to admit that you don't have all the answers.
Right.
Know what you don't know. And then find people that know those things that you don't know. That's how you build a great team.
I always say I'm smart enough to know what I know, but I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. Right? I mean, you have to admit that.
Yeah. And a lot of people won't do it. It's my way, the only way. I have the only vision. I have this vision. It has to be done this way. No. It has to be done this way until you lose your job 2 years from now and you're fired. That's the only thing. That's the only that's going to happen.
Right.
Because you aren't flexible enough to really be inclusive of the people that matter. It's like our offensive linemen give great feedback in the course of a game.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't listen to, no, coach called the play. No, I'm sorry, coach called the play. I'm going to run this. Yeah, Joe, but that end is cheating down. He's going to blow this whole thing up. Mm-hmm. No, that's okay. I don't care what you say. Coach says run it. No, you have to be in leadership. You have to be fluid. You have to be able to call audible.
And in the position you played, it's the ultimate leader in the position of the game. I mean, it's a team effort, but ultimately, you have to lead these guys.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
I've added this to some. I actually was going to add this to my presentation, and I'll share it here with you. Tom Brady, I think, is the greatest quarterback that's ever played the game of football.
better than Dan Marino.
Well, Danny was incredible. Danny had the quickest release I've ever seen up until I see Aaron Rodgers.
You know what? I just thought of something. I'm going to call it a quick audible. I have to ask you this because you're the only qualified person to answer.
Sure.
You ready? Dan Marino. Okay. There's a saying that I believe in. Dolphins was my team. Or they are my team. I know they're.
We know your prejudice.
Okay.
I got you.
So
your prejudice towards the Dolphins.
So Dan Marino. If you look at all the plays, 3 out of 4 times they're passing plays, right? I mean, they pass because they never had a running back
with Duper and Clayton. Absolutely.
Duper and Clayton. So let me ask you something. So do you agree with this? That where they say the difference between Joe Montana, because that was his era, right? Dan Marino. Joe Montana, Dan Marino is Joe Montana had a team. Dan Marino was the team.
I agree.
Do you kind of agree with that?
I do. Yeah, I think so much of it revolved through Dan. I think Tampa Bay found out just how important the quarterback position is too.
Tom Brady.
I mean, let's face it. In our business, in the professional football, if you've got one, you've got a chance.
Right.
If you don't have one, if you have an average one, you're going to have an average record.
You're going to have an average record. Okay.
Because that position has to make difference. But absolutely.
I just wanted to ask you that question because
I believe Danny drove everything the Dolphins were during that period of time. I think so much of it had to do with Dan. And before that, they had the Killer Bees because those were the ones I played against in the Super Bowl. And I'm telling you, Bo Camper and Baumauer and that group, they were incredible.
Yeah.
But
anyway, back to your analogy with Tom Brady.
With Tom, I decided to do some research when it came to leadership. I recognize him as the greatest because he has won Super Bowls with so many different types of people.
That's a great point.
See, we didn't have free agency back in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
I think Joe Montana is right there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But Joe had a core of players around him.
Huge core of players.
Pretty similar for a long period of time.
Right.
I did as well. Not that I'm in that category, but I mean, just, at that time, you couldn't move.
No, I think you are. Respectfully so.
Phil Simms.
Yeah.
We all had a group around us that were pretty much the same.
Right.
Tom's done it with so many changing positions. How many receivers, how many offensive linemen, how many running backs, and yet he still win a championship.
Right.
And I thought about it. I said, okay, acknowledge he's the greatest at the quarterback position. But let's look at the championships. The first championship, Super Bowl 36, okay? Adam Vinatieri kicked a field goal to win it with 4 seconds left.
Right.
The second one, Super Bowl 39, Adam Vinatieri kicked a kick with no time left. And then you take a look at the catch Wes Welker makes against the Atlanta Falcons when they're driving back. And then you take a look at the interception that Malcolm Butler had against the Seattle Seahawks.
Mm-hmm.
Those are 4 world championships. Those are 4 Super Bowls that somebody on the team made a play
to make it happen.
Yeah. And so when we refer to Tom as the greatest and having won 6 world championships, you have to look at that as the ultimate team position. I've always qualified the quarterback position as the single most dependent position on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Because you rely on so many. Ask Jim Kelly how important a kicker is.
Yeah.
And I've told people in the Buffalo area.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And you look at the kicks that have been won, the games that have been won by kickers.
Mm-hmm.
But Mark Mosley, our kicker in Washington, when we played together, he was an MVP of the National Football League in 1982.
Wow.
That's how valuable he was.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't have qualified for the Super Bowl had it not been for Mark.
Not been for him. Yeah.
So I've been thinking about that when you talk about that position of leadership. When we ordain somebody a certain way, we have to sort of look at it in a little bit broader picture.
But it also to your testament of Tom Brady. How hard is it to deal? Because as you know, when you have different team structure come and go, like in Tom Brady's career, you got to deal with different personalities.
Almost 50% of his games, he's played in the Super Bowl.
Right.
He's 6-3. You know how hard it is to get to the Super Bowl.
I don't know, but I get a theory. Yeah. But I can imagine he has to deal with these personalities, and as a leader, man, you got to be. There's a lot going on. You got to be authoritative, but you got to compromise. You have to be, you have to be respectful. You have to be the ability to motivate.
I'll share another thing with you. My mom used to say this: "It's never what you say to somebody, Joey. It's how you say it." And as a quarterback, if you've got a receiver that's struggling, you don't beat him into the ground. I never yelled at anybody. You want to encourage him. You're not going to lose your job as a quarterback. You're the starting quarterback of the football team. You're not going to lose. Well, today it happens more frequently than it did.
Right.
But and somebody's struggling, I'll throw the ball better. I'll take responsibility for it.
Mm-hmm.
That person then works harder. People like Peyton Manning,
Mm-hmm.
Drew Brees,
Mm-hmm.
Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
Peyton went from Indianapolis to Denver. He raised the level of everybody in that organization.
Yeah.
Everybody's level was raised.
Was risen. Yeah.
And same thing with Tom. The accountability for what you do is up now because that person has done it. That person stands at the top of the mountain.
Right.
I can't disappoint that person, and that's what leadership is.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Tomlin, the coach of the Steelers, says something great. He talks about leadership. He says, "My job as the coach of this football team, as the leader of this football team, is to give all of my players and coaches the best opportunity to be as successful as they can be."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think that's what leadership is, provide them with opportunity.
And I think, talk about people that elevate their game. I'll share just a quick story with you from my aspect as a CEO of a couple companies. But when COVID hit, I remember I'm watching the news at home. It's about 2 a.m, and people in this room that are with us here producing this can attest to this. I had to come up with an action plan. And I did. And I was busy all night scrambling notes, and everybody here was kind of fearful. They didn't know what was going to happen. And I wrote an email. I comprised an email, and I CC'd every single employee in the company in different offices we have. And it was at, Joe can attest to this. It was at, I think, 3 a.m, 3:30 a.m. And an email, I'm not going to read the whole email, but the email went something like this. I said, "Look, guys, I don't know what's going to happen. I can't forecast the future, but I'll tell you what. As the captain of this ship, you bet your ass I'm going to give it my hardest, sleepless nights, and I'm not going to let this ship sink. It's not going to sink." I said, "We're going to figure it out. I am figuring it out." And I go, "But you know what?" I go, "You're only as good as the team around you, and all of you are my team." And I said, "So I might ask you to do things that you're uncomfortable doing. I might ask you to work 15 hours to 20 hours in a day to get stuff done. But I go, it's everybody's individual effort, which is going to keep this ship from sinking."
Yep.
And, and so I need everybody, I want to let everybody know I'm in this 100%. Is it my company? Yes, but it's your company too. Meaning, everybody has to contribute 110%, especially right now, what's going on in times of uncertainty.
Sure.
And I don't know if you remember, everybody, the level of work, and these guys work hard already as it is, had risen, I'd say, at least by 50%. Because they all understood, and they're like, it motivated people.
Yeah, sure.
Everybody rose up to a level and performed at a level.
You want people to feel like they matter.
Correct.
And what you basically said is, look, we're not going to be here unless you matter.
Everybody, right? Everybody matters.
Because everybody matters. Yeah, I have letters after my name. I have a title. I've done certain things, but without you, I'm nothing.
Right.
And that's basically what I'm saying about Tom.
Yeah.
Is without those 4 Super Bowl plays, 3 of which he had nothing to do with, other than throwing the ball to West, but that was one of the greatest catches
of all time.
Lynn Swann has some fantastic catches in Super Bowl, nothing like Wes Welker's. As you look and examine what goes on inside of companies, they do look for leaders. Sometimes the leader is so far away they don't feel like they matter.
They matter.
One of the things I cite in the book is if you run a manufacturing company, when's the last time you actually went into the manufacturing facility and you walked the line and you looked the people in the eye and you let them know how important they were? It isn't all about bonuses.
Yeah.
It's about human nature. For us is let me know that I matter.
Yeah.
Let me know that I mean something to you and to this company.
Sure.
And then you got me.
Yeah.
You got me.
I got to admit, that's one of my weak points. I think even people will test it in here. I get so laser focused on where am I taking the company next and what am I doing, where sometimes I forget to just stop and say, you know what? Thanks for doing a goddamn good job. You know what I mean? I forget about it.
You won't from this point forward.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought that to light, and I appreciate that. Joe, so I mean, I could talk to you for 10 hours, but I want to get to the segment of this podcast where we ask just some real quick off-the-wall quirky questions. Sure. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and then you ask me anything you want, personal, business, doesn't matter.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay. If you didn't make it to the NFL and you weren't a great motivational speaker, what's one profession you think you would be doing? Or a profession that you always wanted to do? It could be it could be anything. If you could pick a profession and be right in it, what would it be?
I got drafted to play professional baseball. Professional baseball was always my first
Really?
love.
I didn't know that.
I got drafted by the Minnesota Twins.
So you were really?
Yeah, I played both sports.
Okay.
I played
know
7
that.
games in college, but I had to leave because we went to spring ball. But baseball was always my first love. I mean, I could sit and watch somebody throw a no-hitter. If I goes, oh, that's boring. I said, man, this is fantastic. It's just fascinating. But I probably would have gone into professional baseball. Where would have gone after that? I'm a funny guy this way. I call myself a windshield guy, not a rear view mirror guy.
Uh-huh.
I don't look. I
look
tend not to look behind me. I take the experiences of what I've gone through and I try and apply them to my life going forward.
Mm.
But I would have wanted to be a professional baseball player.
Okay.
That was it for me.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. If there's one person you could sit down with, dead or alive, and really sit down, let's say over a dinner, and pick their brain. It could be anybody in history. Who would it be and why?
Oh, wow. Gosh. Muhammad Ali. I have tremendous respect for him.
Mm-hmm.
He changed a nation. He had great influence worldwide. I knew his manager. His manager was a Notre Dame guy.
Okay.
Managed Notre Dame guy. But I think just off the top of my head, he would be one that I think it would be fascinating to understand who he really was.
Mm.
I saw who he was.
Well, he had different type of characters,
but
almost,
but
right?
he was just so important in society.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
He had so many different roles that he served.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one, if I could have
Sure,
two,
go ahead.
would be Dr. Theodore Hesburgh, the head of the University of Notre Dame. He was on the Nuclear Commission. He walked with Dr. King. I mean,
was he there doing your time when you attended?
He was our president.
He was the president.
Yes,
okay.
He was president of our university, and he would be another one that when Father Ted used to come to practice, we all stood up and took note.
Wow.
That because he didn't come very often. I think
Yeah.
I saw him twice at practice.
Right.
When he showed up, something was going on. We were probably going to play USC.
Yeah.
But he would be another one that
Another one.
But gosh, I've been blessed in so many ways to meet so many wonderful, influential people. Money has never impressed me.
Mhm.
I mean, you're around people of great wealth.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the most valuable thing that anyone possesses is intelligence, knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge is truly
Sure.
the greatest value that we can have as individuals. And that's why I've become an insatiable reader. I like to learn as much as I can about different things.
Well, it's the only one.
And I wasn't that way.
You weren't that way.
Oh, no, shoot, no. High school, all I cared about was 2 things. It was sports and girls.
And girls.
I don't even know if books was on the radar.
Probably not.
Not. But then in college, like I said, I spent my first 2 years in college, went on one date my freshman year, one date my sophomore year. I applied myself to my academics. I wanted to stay eligible, and I played football.
Mm-hmm.
And then I played basketball, and I did all that other stuff. But I just really wanted to focus totally and completely on those things that I felt like I needed to do the things I wanted to do.
And you speak about knowledge. It's the one things in life you can never get enough of.
No.
I mean, there's not one point where you say, okay, I'm
got
done.
it all.
You got it all. You never be able to get it all. It's the funny thing about life.
Nope, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory. Okay, I love that show, by the way. Jim Parsons. I don't know how Jim does. I mean, honest to goodness, watching. And I've read some places where he's a very bright guy.
Yeah.
And there's a knack to be able to take a script and own it and make it sound like it's all you.
Oh yeah.
And I like when he went in for the audition, they were auditioning people for him. He went in and read, and he came up with something. And they said, "We want you to come back tomorrow. I don't think you can do this again." Came back the next day. Said, "Cancel everybody else. Nobody else. We don't want anybody else on
This
the
is
show.
our guy.
It's Jim Parsons.
Jim Parsons.
That's it." But just some of the things that he talks about, I shake my head and I go, "Wow." I mean, I admire intelligence. I admire knowledge. I admire education. And that's why I think every young person out there ought to endeavor. If you're a great athlete, that's fine. But the fact of the matter is those skills are going to go away, and all you're going to have left is what you put in between your ears.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I mean, in my case, I was fortunate to play 15 years.
How many? I mean, what's the average career span of an NFL player?
At our position, well, 3.6 years.
Right.
I mean, that's about it. So basically, by the age of 25, you're out of the game.
You're out of the game.
Now, what do you got?
Right. And it doesn't matter if you're a first round draft.
Doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Ask me anything. You're the guest here, but you're the big man on campus. But anything? I mean, I know we know a little bit about each other, but anything?
Why did you choose the business you're in?
Great question.
Of course it is. I asked it. You said to come up with a great question. Can I tell you?
I'll give you the short answer. If you look at industries, it comes down to two things. On a strategic level, whether you look at this as a positive or a negative, everybody needs money. It's unfortunately, it's how our world goes around, right? So if you look at every major war fought, and every policy change, somehow, some way, it boils down to money, right? And so it's the one thing that no matter if the economy is good or bad, if the economy is bad, and the only thing we're taught as little boys and little girls, if you want money, where do you go? You go to the bank. What if the bank's not an option, right? What if the bank struggles? What if the bank pulls back? We saw this in 2008, right? Now where do you go? The demand for what I provide goes up when you take it, when you restrict it from people. But then on the flip side, if you look at a growing economy, what we were in prior to COVID, right? Everything's growing and the economy's coming back. What happens to the demand for what I provide? Goes up. When there's growth, you need capital. And there's very few industries where that's the case, where the economy's bad or good. For what I provide is always at a constant need. There hasn't been a time in history where people say, we don't need money, right?
Right.
It's not a trend. It's not a fad. It doesn't come in, come out. We always need money. And so I wanted to immerse myself into an industry that everybody always needs. And so that's one aspect. The second aspect, though, what I enjoy what I do, you can make money, but if work hard and dedication, but it's about helping people. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, when I hear, I look back at our numbers at the end of the day, at the end of the year, and I say, well, we funded, 1,000 transactions. Let's just take a simple number. That's 1,000 people, 1,000 business owners, or 1,000 real estate investors that without us, and remember, I'm in the field of alternative finance, right? So a lot of times guys that come to us had trouble with the bank. It doesn't have to be they had a bad credit score or whatever. It just could be the bank didn't like what the person wanted, or, they didn't want to invest in that person. That's 1,000 people that were helped that are going out and helping other people. You take another business, maybe they're helping other people. So that's a real good feeling. Mm-hmm. It's kind of comes back full circle. In the end, you're helping people.
That's great.
So that's why I'm in this industry.
I have another one for you.
Go ahead.
What is the one thing that you don't have that you've always wanted?
Wow, that's an excellent question. Is that an excellent question, Joe? Jesus,
the best.
Yeah, probably the best. Yeah.
Anybody ever ask you something like that?
No, nobody. What is the one thing that
you don't? What's the one thing you don't have that you've always wanted?
Does it have to be an object, or can it just be an idea?
It's an open-ended question.
Open-ended question.
It's the question is, what's the one thing that you don't have that you've always wanted, whatever you want it to be?
I want a legacy. So when I'm dead and gone, and I don't have it yet, you don't have it yet. When I'm dead and gone, I want people to remember me, not for what I have, but remember me for things that I've done. And I'll model it after Andrew Carnegie. People see Carnegie Hall. They a man who gave back. I don't have that yet. And it's almost like I'll never have that. And who knows if, when I'm dead and gone, I mean, who knows if that will be left. But I look at, let's just take, I'm 40, okay? Turned 40 last year. I'll be 41 this year.
Happy birthday.
Christmas Day, actually. That's why I spell my name with a K, Chris Kringle.
That's great.
The one thing I don't have, which keeps me striving, is I want to build a legacy so people look back and go, wow, that guy did good things. He helped people, he did good things. That's what
wonderful.
I don't have.
That really is. It's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, material stuff is material stuff. I don't.
And it comes and goes.
Comes and goes.
Money comes and goes.
Correct.
But I think I agree with you. I think what we leave behind is important. It's important for other people to understand that you were put here to service, to
Right.
be able to do things for others. Yes, you're blessed. We're all we've been blessed
We've all
in
been
our
blessed
lives.
right.
But man, there's nothing like a smile on someone's face that you've extended a hand to, or helping somebody across the street, or to me, I've never seen anybody frown when they see a puppy.
Great point.
I've never seen anybody frown when they hold a baby.
Yeah.
I mean, and those are the warm little, snuggy little feelings that I get. Somebody, it's everybody. Oh, it's so cute. And, not that our legacy will be like puppies and babies, but you want people to be able to say, something, that person did a lot for other people, and that to me is thank you very much. Close. Now we close the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Joe, what can I say? We said it all.
Oh, it's been great.
We danced around a lot of different
I have
areas.
enjoyed this so much, Chris.
And I
really
appreciate
have.
you coming on here. It's been an honor.
It's great. It's fun.
It's been an honor.
It's thoroughly, and it's a wonderful experience. It's a different experience than we normally get. I
Mhm.
normally get it.
Is that what you normally get?
As
Yeah.
an athlete, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a different world. And finance, by the way, is I'm a huge investor
Yeah.
and a market trader and everything else. So financial world's always been fascinating.
Not different from the football world.
Nope, not at all.
As we found out.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you. I can't thank you enough. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. It's been a pleasure to meet you, get to know you, and really, I can't thank you enough. Let's just say that. It's been great. I remember watching you on TV, and
I appreciate it.
to be here with you now is somewhat of a little affirmation of my own. And here we are, sitting here getting to interview you.
It's nice to be around long enough to be able to be interviewed.
That's a good way to look at it. All right. Well, hopefully all of you enjoyed that. I know I certainly did. Hopefully you guys will. A lot of great lessons we learned from here. This is something that a lot of lessons that I learned. I could take away from this. So, Joe, thank you again. Guys, tune in. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Commercial Capital. And we will see you on the next one. It probably won't be as good as this one, but we will see you on the next one. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Chris.
There are just too many commercial loan brokers that don't have a damn clue of what they're doing. All we're trying to do here is better the industry for everybody. At the end of the day, you can make great money in this industry, but in the end, it's all about helping people. People always say, Chris, how can I be a successful broker? It's 2 words, hard work and dedication. If you don't like talking to people, you probably shouldn't be in this business.